Is it
Mm.
true you lived in China, correct?
Yeah, yeah, 7 years in China.
And do you remember, is it true? I've heard that every Muslim in China is rounded up and forced into these FEMA style prison camps.
Mm. Well, one of the stories that I did for them was about a mosque and a church. So that one's actually on my personal page, Jason Bainbridge, and that's called The Spirit of Xinjiang. So at that point, they were fairly open with it. You know, in China, back prior to the Trump administration, prior to them, they were getting the love from the Clintons and all that. And so China was really growing and it was really allowing a lot of freedom. And in fact, in 2012, the leader at the time said that China was heading towards soft democracy with Chinese characteristics. But 2016 rolled around, 2017, and things started going a bit haywire. So the trade war changed China a lot. And yeah, there are those camps out there. I've heard of them. I've never been out there in the area, but the
But
area
they're
that I was in was actually quite free, and there were mosques and people were going to church, and I did interview some leaders and that sort of thing.
but they are persecuting people based on their religion, is that correct?
Well, let's put it this way: I was baptized again in an African Baptist church in my city in China, and this was 2013. So they were actually quite free. And it's only been, I mean, I've heard of something along that line, but I would go to Muslim restaurants. It's my favorite restaurant, Lanzhou Lamien. Lanzhou is a place in China, and Lamien means noodles. So Lanzhou noodles, it's a big chain run by only Muslims, Muslim Chinese. And so they have a whole chain of restaurants. So I think, particularly in that area, um, there is some kind of mix up between probably known terrorists and so on. And probably because in that area, there's probably a few people coming in, infiltrating as ISIS. Perhaps. But in my region where I was, which was between Nanjing all the way down to Shanghai, it's about 2 hours in a high-speed train from Nanjing down to Shanghai. Along that whole area, it was pretty open. Muslims went to mosques. They opened restaurants, and I had Muslim food almost every day.
Okay. I've seen
Mm.
video footage of them being forced into these prison camps.
Mm.
And you also made a short video about this gas pipeline in Wuhan that recently exploded. Is that correct? The video was very short. Can you give us any more information about that?
Well, that actually came from inside China, and that was just a copy from the news article, which is down in the link as well. Now, this comes back to the well, what I heard from Benjamin Fulford about this is that there was a 5G related explosion. Wuhan was the very first smart city ever rolled out. And apparently, according to my sources, there wasn't a large explosion, and I didn't see any footage of it. I had to hunt around for it. It took me about a week or so to find it. And one of my students online, who was living in Hong Kong, she actually pointed that story out to me. And so I posted that on my personal channel, Jason Bainbridge. So the idea behind that is that apparently, according to sources, that the 5G smart grid exploded and there were tons of thousands of, well, actually thousands of casualties and no doubt deaths. But I haven't heard any solid numbers of how many people were involved, but that was the only actual video evidence that I could see. And then they dropped the coronavirus. So there seems to be some correlation between 5G affecting the immune system and the immune system not being able to fight against COVID-19 because of the surface. So if you put the map of where the smart grids are, and then you map that for where most people are having the trouble with COVID-19, and it's surprisingly accurate.
And So it was, though, a gas pipeline that exploded. Is that correct?
I don't know for sure. I heard it was a smart grid explosion, but that Chinese article that came from a Chinese article.
Maybe
So they
the
looked at a gas pipe.
maybe the gas pipeline exploded part of the grid.
Yes. There were probably a lot more because they had military helicopters. There's another video there which you have to look at the article and use a translator to read the article. But there is another video there of a whole bunch of military helicopters flying in. So something went down, and then shortly after that, this COVID-19 thing started.
Did you get any information that the explosion of the grid was intentional, or an accident, or any inclination or idea?
They say it was an accident, as far as I understand. It was an accident because they have not perfected the technology. And so, in fact, you can take a look at, I just found a video from Israeli Health Department have also, they are spreading concerns that 5G is not very healthy for the body, and it does compromise the immune system. So the only country that's actually coming out and say something is Israel, which is very unusual for them to come out. But they have now a new policy in place where they are now very dubious about 5G technology in its current state. There seems to be a very good opportunity in the future to tweak, recalibrate the technology so it doesn't hurt people as much. But it's just not ready. It was not ready. And there are thousands of doctors who have been petitioning the government.
So now Israel's even speaking out about it.
Which is a real, how do you say in baseball, when it spins, when the ball spins.
Experts have been raising health concerns related to 5G since well before this so-called pandemic. Doctors are reporting that it's been a mild flu season, and hospitals and practices are slow. Dr. Buttar in New Zealand among them. And they're also reporting that almost every death is being labeled COVID-19 related, just to kind of exaggerate the severity of it and scare people, like a psyop. Scientists are saying COVID-19 is not a natural virus, that it was made in a lab. The people are sick of the lies. Nationwide protests over the stay-at-home order. At least 30 states have now protested. These protesters include people armed with firearms exercising their Second Amendment, the purpose of which is to protect we the people against tyranny. In Annapolis, Maryland, thousands of cars drove around the State House to protest the stay-at-home order, and in Michigan, thousands of cars drove to the state capitol in Lansing to protest the stay-at-home order. At least 4 sheriffs in Michigan said they wouldn't enforce the governor's policy, including Sheriff Cole in Mason County. Virginia passed new gun control legislation that Governor Northam signed into law earlier this month that already had Americans on edge, as gun control legislation is unconstitutional. Now at least 27 more states have begun major protests, including California, Colorado, Illinois, Florida, Tennessee, Washington, Ohio, Kentucky, Minnesota, North Carolina, Utah, Virginia, Texas, Arizona, Montana, Indiana, New Hampshire, Nevada, Wisconsin, Idaho, Pennsylvania, Alabama, New York, Missouri, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Oregon. The mainstream media is largely downplaying these protests, I've seen a lot of articles and news broadcasts that say 5 or 6 states are protesting, but I haven't seen anyone mention more than 7. Now at least 30 states are protesting.
I didn't hear you say Colorado.
It was in the list.
It wasn't.
Yep, Colorado. Yep, Colorado is one of them. They're protesting in Colorado big time.
That airport, that Colorado airport is pretty expensive. Apparently that's also a location for a DUMS, a deep underground military base.
Yeah, I heard about that. That there's one either in Colorado or just along the border. In fact, that's I had a gentleman I did an interview with recently, named Doug, I believe was his name. He's got a channel that I'm trying to help him promote as well. He had a lot of great information, and he saw a UFO when they were widespread sighting. And he provided photographs and stuff that I was able to show the audience. And he was talking about how MUFON actually interviewed this gentleman, and they told him that what he saw came out of the new Area 51. So that was very interesting to hear about.
Speaking of UFOs, so I had an experience when I was young, and it was actually in New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand, and it was a party. It was my sister's party, and she was 16, I believe. I was 8. She didn't want me out there, so I sat in my room out the window watching them have their little 16th birthday party. And they had some tents and all that. They were having barbecue. And sometime in the evening, a very large golden disc appeared above the house next door. And it was quite a phenomenon because now I don't know if it's just modern technology that they're test driving or it's out of this world. Nobody really knows what is a UFO. There's a lot of conjecture on it, but we had a good look at it, and there was a large group of us, and we were all looking up wondering what it was. And it looked like a gold pendant. You know the ones that they used to open and you put your picture of your wife and your daughter or something?
Yeah.
A neck chain pendant, gold pendant, that was shaped like that and just kind of hovering over there. And the event took about a minute. And it felt like a lifetime. We were all looking, pointing at it, and then whoosh, it was gone again.
When you saw that UFO, what did you have? Did you have a feeling that it was extraterrestrial or like military?
You know, the problem with that event is I don't remember what happened up until that point that I was standing at the window. Everything else before that is quite vague. So I just kind of found myself staring out the window and watching. So like the afternoon before that, I don't even remember. So I can't say, but it had lights underneath it. It had a series of lights, colorful lights underneath it. And people were just in awe. It was shock and awe situation. And it was so close to her. It was like really, really close. It was right over the house next door. So that's only about 15 meters, 20 meters away. And it was the size of maybe a 3-bedroom house, a long 3-bedroom house. That was quite wide. And I might be inclined to think that it wasn't human technology. I might be inclined to think that, considering I have a suspicion about what happened that evening.
By any chance, were you able to get any photos or video of it?
No, this is far too long ago. No, I was 8 years old. I'm now 7 years old.
Well, we all appreciate you telling us about it, though. That's interesting. We're going to be getting a new visitor in the solar system later today. On Saturday, April 18th, the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico captured on radar an image of the asteroid 1998 OR2, which will fly by Earth on April 29th at some point. I'm going to provide images of it on the screen for everyone to see, and you'll be able to see it as well. And I wanted to say before you forget, let me know, either you can leave me a message in Discord, or let me know when a good time to premiere the video will be, if you want to be able to join us for the premiere and the live chat discussion.
Okay. I'll have to look at my schedule tomorrow. I work online. In fact, I start work in about 30 minutes time.
Well, you could leave me a message too in Discord. Yeah.
Sure. When we finish the call, I'll check my schedule and I'll give you my available times, and we can definitely go for a live chat.
And I want you to, when you watch the video, you can see these images of this asteroid OR2. They've got one picture of it that looks like a asteroid, but that I don't think that's a real photo. It's just kind of like a
composite.
Yeah, but I do show two real photos of it, and the real photos of it they don't look like an asteroid. It looks like a UFO. So it's pretty.
Well, we could be getting close to that. The thing with the White Dragon Society, Benjamin Fulford Society, I met him before he became the leader of the White Dragon Society, and before he decided to take on the Cabal and the Illuminati. So I knew him prior to this scenario, and he often tries to avoid the extraterrestrial side of it. However, he is aware that there is some X-Files in there, and that we have been locked down on the planet because we're so dangerous. We're not allowed out into the solar system.
Oh yeah, that's my understanding too. Not until humanity as a whole becomes more spiritual, because we've become very materialistic. We need humanity needs to become more spiritual and raise their level of consciousness.
That's right. Yeah, and stop murdering people and sharing and time to share resources and look after the planet in general. Yeah.
Well, Jason Bainbridge, we're going on, I think, over an hour now, or about an hour or so, and I'm going to get ready to wrap it up. It's been an amazing conversation. We went over a lot of very interesting stuff. You provided a lot of valuable information for the audience. Very interesting information. I'm hoping that maybe I can have you on as a guest again in the future as more of these topics come up, or we come across more information. I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, I think this is only just the beginning of something amazing. Because we've got the Great Awakening taking place. The signs there are signs in the heavens. The last trumpet. You see, so I think we've really only just scratched the surface, to be honest.
I agree. Before we wrap it up, was there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
Nope, that's fine. Fine.
All right, Jason Bainbridge, and I will be leaving, like I said, a link in the description for. Do you want me to do it for both of your channels? Links?
Sure. Yeah. I've got two channels. I've got a personal channel, which just nowadays I've stopped making little mini documentaries about this. I'm just taking people's work, and I'm literally just copying it, and I'm just posting it, reposting it. So it's kind of like a mirror site, because most of these people want this information out there anyway, and I'm also conserving my own energy because I work a lot. So anything that I see critical, I'm now downloading from YouTube and just posting on my personal page. It's also got a lot of my previous projects, which are not related at all. But DNA Banker's on there. I've got some of the TV work that I've done, and some of the advertising projects that I've been involved with for Chinese customers, as well as my TV show from New Zealand. So there's a bit of everything on that page, and that's probably been shadow banned pretty much because of DNA Bankers. But my other channel, Air Saigon, I started just before COVID-19 kicked in, it was a rehash of my Spanish lifestyle TV show, which I made in New Zealand, called La Buena Vida, which means the good life, where I talk to migrants living in New Zealand that speak Spanish or Portuguese from Latin America or from Portugal and Spain, and what are they doing in New Zealand, what is their life like, and what's their experience. So it's lifestyle. So we got Air Saigon, and I started building that, and then of course everything shut down. There were no restaurants. So I'm going to be kickstarting that off again soon as well. So, but that's purely just going to be a lifestyle channel.
Yeah, and I forgot. I forgot. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, can't be focusing on the negative all the time.
Oh no, of course not.
Got to celebrate life as well.
Yes, and I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about Project Bluebeam, you were talking about how it's kind of ties into like a takeover of the world agenda. But not only that, the method that supposedly Project Bluebeam uses is exactly similar to what we're experiencing now, where they plan on spraying these chemicals or these exosomes, whatever you want to call it. And I looked at it briefly, the information, and supposedly what it does is it gives them, I think it uses nanotechnology or something, I'm not sure, but they acquire a way to kill people with this technology where they can supposedly kill a person. And supposedly 1 in 5 people is infected with it already, and they plan on using that as almost like blackmail or to get people to follow them or to do what they want. And you have to wonder how much of that is true or how much of it is psyop. But it's interesting and to think about in light of what we're all facing right now.
Well, I actually did last week. I did post a little video. I watched a very long mashup documentary of some really old footage, and I found something pertaining exactly to what you're discussing now. Go back to 1995, they already had the nanotechnology to infect people, and the idea was by using cell phone towers, they're able to activate the disease.
And that gets right into the 5G, right?
And that gets into the 5G, that's right, as well. But I have heard also, I believe, I have heard from Benjamin Fulford that he was told by some sources that 5G is actually safe if it's calibrated right.
Yeah, you were explaining that earlier, and that's good to hear. That's news to me. I didn't know that. I haven't heard that before. So that's definitely positive to know and to hear, and hopefully, we can get the right people in the right places that do the right thing for humanity. And you know what John Lear says, right? E.T. didn't.
Learjet Corporation, sure.
John Lear, the grandfather of conspiracies, he says E.T. didn't create us to let somebody come along and decimate the population by 50% or wipe us all out. So, and I kind of agree with him that we're going to make it through this. Whether we think of it as angels or guardian angels or God or higher power, higher self, whatever it is. I think that we're going to pull through.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, just very quickly, see what I mean? It just keeps coming. You were talking about, this is definitely going to be the last one because I've definitely got to get ready for work. So you were mentioning that people in the black community were suffering in large numbers.
Yeah, Al Jazeera just had a big story on that earlier today.
Right. So, Dr. Keshe, Keshe, Dr. Keshe is a physicist from Iran, and he actually does trainings and I sat through a 4-hour training, which he'd already finished, but I just watched the video and I isolated a portion of that and I posted that on DNA. I posted that on my YouTube channel, and he goes into great detail explaining that the soul for those two Chinese doctors, you know, the ones that became black.
I'm listening.
Yeah,
Your
two
team.
Chinese doctors that were involved in the very first outbreak in Wuhan have woken up and they've slowly over a few days they've become black.
Really? So no, I did
Two,
not. I did not know that. That's news to me. Can you explain that
yeah,
a little bit more for a moment before you go?
yep. Now, this is in the mainstream news in China, so this is not a conspiracy theory. It's actually in the mainstream. In China, China doesn't come out very often with anything like relevant to the actual situation. So I think China is realizing that they can't get away with this. And I also do feel that this is an attack on China as well.
What do you mean they
Um,
became black though? Can you explain that?
okay. Yep. So some of the two doctors that were sort of leading the charge and helping people with COVID-19
In the
have
Wuhan,
become black.
just to make sure we're clear, you're talking about doctors from the Wuhan lab?
Doctors from China. I don't
Okay.
know which lab that they're from. They were in a regular hospital. I think they're hospital doctors.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're hospital doctors. And Dr. Keshe has a very interesting take on it, that the soul is returning to its original condition. And this is why blacks are getting affected the most, because it goes back to the idea that we came from one race originally and that we spread out, and that's from Africa. And so I've actually done a deep dive into some of those old legends where I have come across some African myths and legends of a famous African thousands of years ago who was trying to work with albinos and try and perfect them so they were perfectly white. So this modification over civilizations have been modified. So you go to and live in an environment, and your body adapts and modifies to that environment, right? So if you live in the desert, you adapt a black body.
Yeah,
You live in a cold climate,
and
and you have a white.
that's kind of what Dr. Rudolf Steiner explains too in Spiritual Science. He talks about that
Mm,
as well. But what about the idea that the original people, rather than being black or white, were in between, in the middle?
I'm not sure. This is just his take on it. This is his take on it, Dr. Kish take. And that video is on there. You can watch it. It's probably about 40 minutes long. I had to cut it out of the 4-hour lecture, and I had to just isolate it to the main details of what he goes on to explain how somehow what has happened is that they've exposed, the virus has exposed us, it's exposed the soul, and the soul wants to return to its original state. So
Interesting.
therefore, the skin color of the Chinese, those two doctors, became black. Not just black, but also the facial features changed to become African
So you're
as
not
well.
you're not talking they got sick and became black from being sick. You're talking about they became black like a regular black person, like a healthy,
Right.
regular black person.
And Dr. Keshe's explanation is that the virus is causing a phenomenon which it cannot control. That some people that are affected are returning to their original body, which their soul was developed
Interesting. That is really
in.
interesting. Or
Yeah.
maybe a body that they had in a previous life.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's specifically saying that the soul is returning to its original condition. So you've got the RNA, the DNA, and then the soul. But the DNA, the RNA, and then the soul. Yeah.
Well,
So that's another thing for another time. So
yeah,
uh, he has some very long lectures. Some of them are 10 hours long.
it's definitely an interesting thing for you to leave us with
Mm,
thinking about here.
mm.
I had not heard that.
I've always kind of had a sneaky suspicion that the original people were black anyway. And then
Okay.
like I said, I did a deep dive and I came across some African myths and legends of a guy, a family that had big heads, and he wanted to perfect the white person. So they started off with albinos, albinos, right? And then mixing them, modifying them with typical black people, and then finally perfecting that they're not blind, they don't all have white hair, they have different features, they don't look albino anymore. So kind of, yeah, some DNA mismatching to create a white person. So, but aside from that, who knows? Let's just find out what's coming down the pipe,
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, Jason Bainbridge, you were a great guest.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Tiffany, we gotta go because I've got to go to work.
Yeah, I appreciated having you on, and hope to have you back.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right, good night.